And welcome back to Capitol Tonight. Well, as we have been reporting, Governor Cuomo has made it very clear in his first days in office that he doesn't shy away from a fight. Less than 3 weeks after he was sworn in, the public employee unions are already up in arms over his reported plan to slash more than 10,000 state jobs. And as we've just heard from Assemblyman Rory Lancman, who is actually one of several lawmakers who oppose Cuomo's plan to let the millionaire's tax expire, it turns out those very positions have earned the new governor an unlikely ally. Conservative Party Chairman Mike Long is joining me tonight from New York City to discuss his party's plans to launch a campaign aimed at bolstering support for the Democratic governor. Chairman, thanks very much for your time.
Good to be with you.
So, right, I think that is, and just in case it was lost on anyone, you're the Conservative Party Chairman, and Andrew Cuomo is a Democrat.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And the bottom line is, I believe the governor, namely Andrew Cuomo, is doing the right thing for the citizens of the state of New York. And whether he's a Democrat or whatever, this has nothing to do with party registration, when in fact he's making the tough choices. And as he said in his State of the State, New York's at a crossroads. We can either continue to take the path of raising taxes, increasing fees, borrow more money, and doing business as usual, but we will also continue to see the moving vans, both on the personal level and on business level, leaving the state of New York. We can't afford to do that anymore, and I think he understands that. And I certainly want to, it's not about just assisting him, it's about fighting for the future of the state of New York, and that's why the Conservative Party is rallying around his economic proposals.
Okay, so much to talk about here. First of all, you are the longest tenured political party chairman in New York right now. You were around for Mario Cuomo's days. That would be Cuomo 1. At that moment in time, could you ever have imagined yourself backing a Cuomo, any Cuomo at all?
Probably not. Probably not.
Right.
But look, I think Andrew is doing, Governor Cuomo is doing the right thing for the taxpayers of the state of New York. And look, I am sure, Liz, you're going to have me on in the future because I'm not going anyplace, and there'll be times where Governor Cuomo and I will have some disagreements. Right now, I don't have a disagreement on the fact that he sees very clearly that New Yorkers can't afford higher taxes, increased fees, and we can't afford to borrow more money. And so I think he's got the right formula, and he's on the right track.
Now, it's probably too early to talk about this, but there was a point in time, in fact, Andrew Cuomo actually was a speaker at the CPAC, the political get-together that you have that's coming up, actually, in Albany. You do it every year. He spoke,
correct,
not 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe just
2 years ago.
Okay. And we'd asked you at that time if you ever thought that you might be able to cross-endorse him. Obviously, you did not. You ended up with Carl Palladino, first Rick Lazio, then Carl Palladino. But could you imagine a time that you would be able to endorse Andrew Cuomo, assuming that, everything went the way he would like it to and he runs for re-election?
Well, who knows what the future has before us. Politics makes strange bedfellows, and I'm not talking about Elliot Spitzer, and I'm talking about Andrew Cuomo, and I think he, philosophically, right now, he's on the right track, trying to restructure the way New York does business, and I commend him for that. And I hopefully, by my commending him for doing the right thing, that I'm not hurting his cause, because if Andrew is successful, it's not about the Conservative Party. You know who wins? New Yorkers win. That's who wins.
Well,
if Andrew Cuomo is successful in what he's trying to do, New York citizens win.
I couldn't imagine, and obviously I haven't spoken to the governor about it, but I couldn't imagine that he'd be upset by this because he's the guy who's going around saying that he has a post-partisan agenda. So your efforts actually dovetail very nicely with his, I would expect.
Well, we intend to do everything in our power on these issues to promote and raise the level of grassroots support for his endeavors.
Okay, before we get into the campaign, though, it should be noted, he is pro-gay marriage. He said just today that he would do everything that he could to try and legalize same-sex marriage in New York. Obviously not something you support. In addition, he supports abortion rights. Obviously not something you support. And that kind of pragmatic approach, your pragmatic approach in crossing party lines to endorse people who are not enrolled conservatives, has angered in the past some of your rank and file. So it's actually, have you gotten any blowback from anyone in your own party for this?
For supporting Andrew Cuomo on the economic issues?
Right.
Absolutely not, because you know, the Conservative Party, in all honesty, has been singing this tune for decades, that we spend too much, we tax too high, and that our fees are ruining and chasing businesses out of New York State. And look, you know, I understand where the governor is on same-sex marriage. You know, the Conservative Party, when that time comes, will be doing battle with him, any legislators that tries to change what traditional marriage really means, and change the structure of the traditional marriage. We're not going to tolerate that, and we will fight that part.
Okay, so let's talk about this campaign then. You are talking about robocalls, maybe mailers, maybe even television, if finances allow. You've got less than $100,000 on hand, according to your most recent campaign finance report with the State Board of Elections. Are you going to be actively fundraising to help Andrew Cuomo?
Well, you looked only at the House account, Liz. We have more than $100,000. We have more than $100,000, and hopefully we will raise some more money. And we are going to do a postcard operation next week. I'm planning to do robocalls to almost 100,000 people to start to generate the grassroots support. If we raise enough money, we will do radio and/or TV or both, if possible.
Wow.
And to assist New Yorkers in turning the direction that we have traveled for the last 30, 40 years in New York State, and take a new direction for the future of the state of New York, and once again bring back the possibility of creating the Empire State again.
Okay, now according to the Daily News report on this campaign, these robocalls are going to be asking voters to contact local legislators and demand that they balance the budget without tax or fee hikes and no new borrowing. And here's the interesting thing, though. As you're talking about the economy and improving it in New York, Andrew Cuomo this morning reportedly is mulling firing between 10,000 and 15,000 state workers. The public employees say that will actually be a negative effect on the economy. That's 10,000 to 15,000 people without jobs. I mean, how does that mesh with this idea that you're trying to jumpstart the economy in New York?
Look, I'm sure if I was in the governor's position, I am sure he is heartbroken that if he has to take those steps and lay people off, nobody wants to see anybody out of work. But one thing for sure, New York can no longer sustain the rate of spending that we have participated in, and New York cannot continue to do business as usual as they've been doing for the last decade or so. So tough choices are going to have to be made. No one said it wasn't going to be without pain, and I certainly don't advocate to see anybody out of work, and I'm sure the governor doesn't want to see anyone out of work. So a lot of tough decisions are going to have to be made, but it's for the long haul. It's for the good of New York, and it's for the future of the state of New York. Otherwise, there'll be nobody left here, Liz, and you've heard me say that before. And I am very pleased that he seems to be making the tough choices not for Andrew Cuomo, but for the future of the state of New York, and that's what counts.
Now, have you spoken at all to the governor about this, or anybody around him? I know you've said that it's not coordinated, but have you given him a call and said, hey, governor, just want to let you know, got your back?
No.
No.
No, not at all. Absolutely no conversation whatsoever.
Not with him and not with anybody?
I think I reported right after the election, I called
That's right, yep.
Governor Cuomo and to congratulate him, but we had no conversation about, in all honesty, I didn't think at that moment in history, while I congratulated him, I didn't think he would continue to stay the course, and he is staying the course. What he said during the campaign, he is saying now, and with even a little bit more volume. And I'm very pleased for the citizens of our state that he's doing that.
Okay, of course. Now we should remind people that you didn't support him during the campaign. You did support Carl Paladino, who was quite critical of Andrew Cuomo. Even Rick Rick Lazio was quite critical of Andrew Cuomo, and a lot of skepticism that he would actually be able to take on the special interests when he was, according to your candidate, such a creature of Albany. But apparently you believe that he is. He's got his money where his mouth is.
At this moment in history, at this time, and this day of the week, he seems to be right on course, and with great surprise and much happiness.
I just want to ask you also, in terms of fundraising, now you did get this really eye-popping contribution from a guy named Rob Mercer. He gave $1 million to the state Conservative Party. It's the second largest contribution. It's the largest in your history of your party, second biggest in New York electoral history, individual contribution. He is a hedge fund guy, if I'm not mistaken. This money you used for an ad campaign against what we know as the Ground Zero Mosque, which is this actually proposed for about a block and change away and has not yet moved towards construction. Are you going to go back to Rob Mercer and ask him to fund this campaign?
Well, I'm going to go back to anybody who has ever donated money and those who haven't donated money to the Conservative Party. And I welcome anybody who wants to write a check so that we can help put New York back on the right track. If that's helping Andrew Cuomo, so be it. And because it's good for the state of New York.
And what was it that spurred Rob Mercer to spend $1 million to actually oppose that mosque?
Well, look, Bob Mercer was a real strong supporter of Rick Lazio, and we got that donation because of his support for Rick Lazio and because of our support of Rick Lazio. And there was no condition on how we would spend the money or not. And at the time, he was very, very helpful to the Conservative Party, and certainly very helpful to Rick Lazio, because with that, I believe we were able to win the Conservative Party primary, meaning Rick Lazio won the Conservative Party primary statewide. Unfortunately, he lost the Republican Party primary.
Just in parting, I wanted to ask you, the Senate Republicans obviously back in power. You have been on and off with them in the past. In the past, you've actually disendorsed people, taken away the conservative line from former Senate Majority Leader Joe Bruno when you thought he was moving too far to the center and maybe even to the left. Have you had a conversation with the Senate Republicans at this point where if you don't think that they are towing the line, Andrew Cuomo's line, a Democrat, that you would do the same thing?
No, we've had none of those kind of conversations. I've had good conversations with Senate Majority Leader Dean Skelos. I believe he has basically signed on also with what Governor Cuomo is doing on the economic front. I think they're committed to try to restructure the way New York is doing business. So I don't think the problem, my hope is, I don't believe the problem is going to be with the Senate Republicans. They won 4 new Senate seats. And the reason they won 4 new Senate seats because the Democrats were dysfunctional in the Senate. I think people were fed up with the rate of spending and the increase in taxes that the Democrats laid on the backs of New York taxpayers. I believe that's not where the problem's going to be. I believe and I know that most likely the problem's going to be with the liberal Democratic Assembly.
Well, strange bedfellows and strange times indeed in New York. I want to thank you very much, State Conservative Party Chairman Mike Long, for joining us. It's good to see you.
Great to be with you.